Meet Maaike. Originally from the Netherlands, she recently moved to Lund, Sweden to do her master's in Asian studies. What is it actually like being an international student in Sweden, and what surprised Maaike the most when she moved? Let's figure it out. If you're new here, my name is Alina and this is a channel about expat life in Sweden and the Scandinavian lifestyle. Let's start.
When I was a child, I used to go to Sweden a lot with my family. I spent the first summers of my life here, and also in my bachelor's, I studied abroad once in Japan, and I really like studying abroad. So I wanted to study abroad again for my master's, but I thought maybe 2 years in Asia is a bit far away, and I would also like to be close to my family. So I was looking at schools or universities where I could study, do a master's program outside of the Netherlands, and I found Sweden. And since I came here a lot when I was a child, I had really good memories because it was always so calm and quiet here. And I looked at the program, so I wanted to do Asian studies, specifically Asian studies that doesn't just focus on East Asia, like Japan, South Korea and China, but also that focuses on Southeast Asia, because I have Indonesian heritage from my dad's side.
Well, coming from Netherlands, do you see any major cultural differences between Sweden and Netherlands?
There are, but what I do like is that Sweden and the Netherlands, it's kind of close in culture. I think people are similar, but I do think Swedish people are a little bit more direct sometimes, especially with emailing. For example, sometimes I get an email with "okay, thanks" back. I've never had it in the Netherlands. Maybe it's not necessarily socially, but getting paperwork done here takes a long time, especially when I went to, for example, get insurance or get my Swedish bank account. Surprisingly for me, the personal number was quite fast, because it also takes 2 weeks, I think, but I had it after 1 week. But yeah, those are kind of the biggest differences for me, at least.
For those people who are maybe planning to come here to live or study, could you give some tips on what to be ready for?
First, when you come here, get a personal number, because you can do get the bank ID, get a Swedish bank account, and your life will just be so much easier. Also, if you decide to work after you study or work during your studies, to find a room before coming here, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of trying. In the Netherlands, it was, at the time, now it's really hard, but quite easy, 2-3 years ago, to find a room. But here I had so many meetings online with people, and every time I was rejected, and then trying for months. I started around March, and I was going to start in August. At some point, I got it. So it takes a lot of time, and I wouldn't want people to feel discouraged when the first time it doesn't work out, because that's how I felt. Learn Swedish, I guess. My Swedish is not so good. I can't speak so well, but I can read it because I read a lot of books. I took the SFE. And for example, today I was at an insurance company, and the lady was helping me, and I told her, you can send me everything in Swedish, you do not need to go translate it, because I can read it. It's just my speaking is not so good, that's why I'm speaking English. And she was just so happy. Okay, I will just send it to you in Swedish, that's fine. So I guess language, finding a place to live, and personal number.
How did you find the place to live in the end?
I did 2 things. I signed up for all the university housing queues, which Lund University has. However, I'm a European student, and the non-European students have a housing guarantee. So that means that I do not have a big chance. But always sign up, I think. I always think it's worth just to try. And then I also started looking for private accommodation. I used Bo Polen, which is also on the Lund University website. It's a separate entity, but it's run, I think, by students or student organizations in Lund. So I just applied to a bunch, I got a reaction, and that's how I found my accommodation.
How would you say the educational system is different here from Netherlands?
I feel, but I speak from personal experience, that the Swedish education, it's not more relaxed in a sense that it's less quality or it's super easy, you can just do whatever. There's more focus on group learning and cooperation, and less a focus on competition. I don't think the Netherlands is necessarily very competitive when it comes to education, but they also don't really focus a lot on peer learning, learning together. So that is something I really like here, that I'm in a class and there's this friendly environment and people get together in groups and they do things together.
What is your experience in building a network of friends or peers or colleagues or fellow students? Do you feel that it's quite easy here to meet new people, here in Lund specifically, or what's your experience?
Lund has a lot of student associations, nations. They are also kind of like student clubs, but differently. Another thing you can do is there are lots of volunteering activities. I'm, for example, a student ambassador, and in the student ambassador program we have monthly meetings, and the people who go there, they're from all kinds of programs, which I personally like, because it's really nice to meet people outside of your bubble, because I see people from humanities, social sciences, and it's really fun to see people from the business school or from biology, because those are people I do not meet on a daily basis.
What would you say are the things that you like the most about studying and living in Lund?
Studying in Lund, I think there's so many study accommodations, like the beautiful library here. I used to have to study a lot at home, also during the pandemic, and also because my own university in the Netherlands had one library and that was it. Even, for example, if here's packed or over there there's a linguistics faculty, it's packed, I can go anywhere basically. It's not limited to, I'm humanities, so I cannot go into entrepreneurship or go into Lund, like the business school, for example. I have my card, I can just go anywhere. That's what I like about the studying here. What I like about living here is that it's so quiet and calm. I also do not live in the city center. I live 10 minutes by bike, 10-15 minutes. And I just study in my room, and I go out and I go for a walk, and there's a park behind my house as well, and it's just so nice and quiet, which is something I like. But if you're a student who really likes to go out and have some parties, then there's enough for everyone, I think. That's what I really like about Lund.
Is there though something that you find inconvenient about living in Lund?
Good question. I do think Lund is very small, especially the international community. So there are two things. One thing is that I want to try to stay in Sweden, for example, learn Swedish. It's in the international community hard to find or make Swedish friends or Swedish people. I have Swedish classmates who I really like talking to. Second is that because the community is so small, it's kind of fun that everyone knows each other, but sometimes everyone knows everything about each other, which can lead to funny situations, I think. So, I mean, it's not necessarily a very bad thing. It's like kind of both sides. If everyone knows each other, that can be good. It can sometimes also be inconvenient.
Why do you think it's difficult to find Swedish friends?
I think because most Swedish students, they are doing the bachelor programs. I'm not sure what it is. I sometimes also think it's that people get so used to the international bubble that they are kind of afraid to go out. I also think sometimes there's this kind of stereotype about Swedish people going around like, oh, they're really kept to themselves or they don't like to talk to international people. But I don't think it's true, because I've met a lot of wonderful Swedish people also in my program. And when I taught my Swedish, well, they're my classmates, but they're also my friends now. When I told them I was learning Swedish, they were so excited and they were like, oh, it's such a good idea. And like, talk to us if you need help or you want to practice. So maybe it's this kind of cultural barrier, but it's also kind of imaginary in a way. Because I never had, for example, a bad experience with a Swedish person.
Do you think we can change that, and how can we take away that gap that exists?
I think one, take Swedish classes. Take the time to learn about Swedish culture, Swedish language. At the beginning of every academic year, I think every semester actually, they have a Swedish cultural class. I went there and it's a lecture, 2 hours, and he explains this and this and this happens, that's why people do it. I think that's really important. And you can also just go on YouTube and then find people like you know, who talk about life in Sweden and Swedish culture. And then next, I think, take a Swedish class. And the best thing is it's free. For example, I take SFI, which is 8 hours. It's quite a lot, I think. I would not recommend everyone to do it. But there's also an SFI, Swedish for Immigrants class. It's only twice a week in the evening for like 2 hours, which is really doable, I think. I think the job market in Sweden, maybe in the Nordics in general, is very challenging because you need to know Swedish. But it's not a big surprise to me because I know many international students in the Netherlands, and then when they graduate, they start looking for a job and they realize they don't speak Dutch. And even though so many, like there's this image of the Netherlands, oh, it's such a, everyone speaks English, basically. Everyone speaks English, but then when you get to the job market, you need to speak Dutch, which is something I'm aware of. And that's why when I came here, I started taking the Swedish course, and I hope to continue that next year. And then building my Swedish skills over the next year and the past year. This way I am kind of preparing for the job market. I've been asking people who are working or who are looking at jobs, kind of what platforms to use. I used a very basic LinkedIn, just go on LinkedIn and see kind of marketing, jobs with Asia, jobs with intercultural communication. So yeah, basically asking people and looking on the internet. I think that's important, and I mean, that's kind of an existential question. Does it make me happy that I make other people happy, right? But yeah, it all kind of comes from a personal struggle to come here and apply for things. And that's why I want to help people. I do volunteers as study support mentor, and I basically help students to plan their studies and to kind of organize their month and their week and how they should study. So that's something I do. And then furthermore, I'm a student ambassador for the Lund University Student Ambassador Program. And we have a monthly meeting, we get together and I answer questions on Unibody for prospective students who have questions about the program or other questions about university, and also per country. Dutch people can reach me and ask Dutch specific questions in Dutch as well. So those are the two main things I do. I think in general, plan on time, especially if you're applying to multiple universities like I did. I had this little schedule with the university names. It was like an Excel template, and then what kind of documents I needed. For example, for one university I need a personal statement, for the other university I need a motivational letter, which was a little bit different. So organize that at least kind of like a year or maybe 2 months before the deadline or the new application start, which in Sweden are in October. So timing, and then the planning. And maybe what I did was I worked for a year as a teaching assistant. So I had savings because getting a scholarship can be competitive. So I would not rely on getting a scholarship per se. So really kind of also plan out your finances, which is something to do not think about a lot in general. So I started my Instagram, I think 6 years ago, because I really liked to study, and I was in community college in the Netherlands, and that's not kind of known for people who like to study. So I tried to just find a community with people that also love to learn, and especially love to learn languages. So I started first on Tumblr, then I went to Instagram, and for me what was really important was to talk to people and kind of connect with people, and then, you know, all be happy about studying. And then I continued that during my bachelor's, and I also wrote about my exchange in Japan, and that's kind of how it grew and became bigger. I met people who were also studying in Japan. Yeah, I think I get a lot of specific questions on Instagram about how do I find a room, how do I get a scholarship. So sometimes I answer them, sometimes I cannot answer them, and I tell them, okay, well, Lund University has the Unibody platform. You can find someone from your country and a specific program. So I kind of refer them.
Tell me first, what's the name of your program?
Okay, so I do the Masters in Asian Studies at the Faculty of Humanities and Theology.
Mm-hmm. And you did your bachelor's in a similar field?
Yes, I did my bachelor's in Japanese Studies and Communication in the Netherlands in Maastricht.
Where does this passion to Asian studies come from?
Well, I think it came from my childhood because my grandparents came from Indonesia. They're half Dutch, half Indonesian. Well, they're unfortunately not alive anymore. But in my house always has been things from Indonesia. For example, my dad has these Indonesian shadow puppets. They're called wayang golek. And they're not necessarily shadow, they're like theater puppets also for shadow play. And I think that's where my interest came from. And then when I was 16, I really liked reading, and I read a lot of Japanese literature. I read Haruki Murakami, Kafka on the Shore, and South of the Border, West of the Sun, which at the time I thought was really special, and I thought Japanese culture so interesting. And I first had the plan to study English, but I just wanted to learn a language that was rather special and not a lot of people could speak. And then I had two friends, they were doing Mandarin Chinese studies in Maastricht, and they told me, oh, you can also study Japanese here, and since that's what you're really into, maybe you should apply. And that's how the story went. I would love to maybe work or live in Japan. However, I'm also very open to staying in Sweden, which is something I would like to do. I'd also like to work at the international desk of a university to kind of help incoming students or students who want to study abroad like me, for example, if they want to go to Asia. So in a different ways I want to do something with my studies, which maybe does not result me in being Asia or being a translator or interpreter. But yeah, work at the university and help students go study abroad.
But so you still needed some knowledge of Japanese before you...
No. I just started and I started learning for 2 years, and I went to Japan for half a year, improved my speaking specifically. And then when I came back, I studied for 1.5 years more, and then I graduated.
Okay. Now I just came up with a dumb question, but I have to ask you, can you say something in Japanese?
こんにちは、私はマイケです。It's just like, I am Maike. Hi.
Okay, oh my god. That's so cool though. And then what would you say are the best practices in your opinion to learn the language, especially such a different language as just Japanese?
I think it goes for every language. Watch lots of TV in that language. Especially now with Netflix, it's much easier, I think, because I think if you go 10, 20 years back, there was not so much media. Now you can go to Netflix. Even if you have a VPN, you can go on the Japanese Netflix. And if you don't have Netflix, you can go to YouTube. So there's lots and lots of content you can consume and learn from, and then make your vocabulary list. I also think having a good vocabulary study program, I use Anki, and it's designed in a way that you get the flashcards, but you don't do the same flashcard every day. If you do a flashcard and you have the answer correct, then it comes back in 3 days, and then if you have it correct again, it comes back in 6 days, and it kind of trains your long-term memory, basically.
Is it an app or is it
physical? It's an app and it's a program.
Do you have a routine for learning languages?
Yeah, so I'm currently, because I'm really busy with my studies, I haven't been studying that much Japanese, but what I used to do last semester was I would get up, get my breakfast, I would watch the Japanese news, and then I could kind of see what was going on and I could learn some new words, new things. I would study for school because I do a lot of reading and writing papers. And also my program does not require language skills, basically. So it's something I have to train myself. I cannot take language class here. Sometimes I would call a Japanese friend and talk with them for an hour or something. And then in the evening I would watch a Japanese Netflix show or something else.
Have you had a barrier when you first came to Japan and tried to speak?
Yes, I remember there was one story. I got a bike in Japan, but in Japan bikes are registered like cars, so they have a number plate. And I got a bike from someone, but the number plate was registered on that person's name. So it kind of looked, basically, if the police would stop me, that I had stolen that bike. So I was obviously kind of panicking because I've never heard of this system. It didn't happen to me. I found out through a friend. I went to the person who lives in the dormitory. I said, I have a bike. It's mine, but it says it's not mine. What should I do? And she was trying to explain it to me. I had to go to the bike shop. I had to ask for a new number plate, or I had to sign the name off and sign my name. And I didn't get it, and also because it's a practice that I'm not familiar with. And luckily I had a Japanese tutor who was helping me with these things. But at that time I remember I felt so incredibly lost. I was like, if this person was not here, then I wouldn't know what to do. I would be running around with a stolen bike, basically. But at the end, it's funny to put in contrast, because at the end, 6 months later when I left, someone came for my gas and electricity. They measured how much I'd used, and I had actually just paid a bill. And they told me, you should pay the bill now. And I said, no, I paid the bill. And he was like, okay, where's your receipt? But I'd thrown the receipt because I was taking the plane 4 hours later. So I'd thrown everything I didn't need. And then I just kind of talked my way out of it, that, yeah, okay, I paid it, I really paid it. I threw the receipt because I'm leaving. And then at some point he was just like, okay, I believe you, it's fine.
Do you have any sort of community here in Lund for students who study languages?
Yeah, so something I really like is they have language cafes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one specifically for speaking Japanese. I went there last semester. There's also Cafe Multilingua, and you can go to table and practice that language with people. There are a bunch of other language cafes as well, but I'm not very familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there you can meet people who study specific languages. And there's also students associations. There's the one for Asian studies. There's also, I'm a member of the UPF, Association of Foreign Affairs. They sometimes have language cafes, I think, I'm not sure. So yeah, there are different communities for people to get together. And also in my own program, there are some people that are studying Japanese, so we can kind of get together and talk about it.
And how many are you students studying Japanese?
In my program, so the program is basically East Asia Studies and Southeast Asia Studies. So it's not just people who've studied Japanese like me. But I think the people in my course who are very interested in Japan and know some Japanese or are learning Japanese, I think it's 10 or 12 people.
Do you think there is any association for Japanese-speaking students or Japanese learning students in Sweden?
There is, and I actually found it a week ago, but I forgot the name. But they organize activities throughout Sweden. I think, I'm not sure because I haven't really looked it up. I have my own friends that I study with or I talk to about. For example, last year I took a Japanese exam and I had a friend from my bachelor's who was going to take the same exam. It was not from the university, it was from a separate institution. So I kind of just met up with her and we studied together. So it's kind of, especially with these kinds of languages and maybe languages in general, you have to kind of build your own community.
Exactly. Also, I was curious about the master's program here. How does it look? So you have 2 semesters and do you have exams after each semester, or I mean also you have 2 years program, right? So could you just like tell about the program a bit?
It's 2 years and every semester has something different. So first semester we had a more general curriculum, interdisciplinary area studies. So how do you study specific areas, economics and politics, it was more general. It was more in the cross-border context of Southeast Asia and East Asia. This semester you could choose a region-specific course. It was either Japan, South Korea, China or Southeast Asia. I chose Japan and Korean societies. And after every course there's a exam. So it's not like you take 3 courses one semester, you have 3 exams. You have the course for 1.5 months and you take the exam, you go to the next course, which is also very different with the Netherlands. I love this system because I always had a really hard time taking 4 different exams on 4 different topics in the same week. I always found it horrible. I don't even know how I did it and passed my bachelor's with this, but here it's great because you just have a course for 1.5 months, you prepare for the exam and you take the exam, finished, next course.
Can you share something about your student life? Like, how does it look? What is a student life here in Lund? What are you doing in your free time? What kind of activities you are part of?
What I like about Lund is that it's kind of for everyone. There are students who like to go out and go have fun, have parties. And there are also students like me. I sometimes like to go out, but I also, most of the time, I like to be in my room and walk in the park and have quiet and peace. First semester, my life, because it's the end of the year, I have a lot of things to do, so it's a little bit more chaotic. But in the first semester, my life was so organized. I woke up at 7 every day. I studied from 8 to 11 or 8 to 12 at lunch. Then all my classes at the time were from 1 to 3 o'clock. I would go to my class, and then after I would see my friends, or I would go to a language cafe. And then in the evenings, there are guest lectures from the association I was part of. Or I would go to like a pub with my friends. Yeah, that was kind of what my life looked like.
Mm-hmm. And do you do something special in the weekends? Like travel around Skåne or?
Yeah, I don't do it every weekend because it's expensive. I love going to Copenhagen. I love going to Denmark. I really like Denmark. So whenever I can, I try to take the bus or the train to Denmark and see Copenhagen. I also went to Helsingborg with some friends. So I do really like doing these kind of trips. But recently I've been really into biking to Malmö because I figured from my place it's only a 1-hour bike. So I've been doing that a few times and just go to Malmö and walk around and see the city. And also in Lund it's very nice to just walk around. There's the botanical garden, there's the park where I live, there's also the Stadsparken. So there's a lot to do, especially if you like nature.
If you consider studying in Sweden, leave a comment telling which school and program you are interested in. I'm curious. Let me know in the comments what else you would like me to ask from the expats in Sweden and in the Nordics. If you live in Sweden and would like to be interviewed for my channel, send me a message on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next video.